If you haven't gotten the message so far, we're working on burdens and transformation this morning. We know what we see out there, what we create out there, what happens out there, all comes from in here. And if we don't do our transformation of uplifting and transforming our own burdens, our own struggles, our own problems, we're just going to, if we don't transmute them, we're going to transmit them and share them out in the world. And I don't know about you, but I would rather do my work in here, so out there is a much cleaner, brighter place. And that's what we're here to do. So those burdens that, Kirk, you talked about in your meditation, and Mary, thank you. You listed them so beautifully in that reading by one of our beautiful members here, Kathy Julene. And we get to do our work this morning. So I'm just going to offer this offering to you, that just, if you'd like to just come and get in touch with all those powerful, uncomfortable emotions and feelings you have inside, just be welcome to do that right now. Because right now, the safe place to do that is when you are in the power and presence of God, of love, of goodness, and transformation. There isn't anyone here that doesn't have the burden that they've been carrying or are carrying or will carry in the future. Because actually in this thing we call life right here, it's the burdens that we can learn from. Of course we can learn from the joy and the wonder and the excitement and the awe, but it's the burdens that really break us apart so we can break through to more understanding and more connection to spirit. So I was looking at a beautiful book by John O'Donohue, and he tells some stories in his books that I really love, and I think stories can really get us in touch with what we're going through right now. So he tells a story of the myth of Sisyphus. And Sisyphus committed some sins in his life, so he was expelled to the underworld for eternity. And he had the task of rolling a huge, giant rock, so heavy, up a very steep hill. And just when he was getting to the top of the hill, his fingers would become weak. And that big boulder, that big rock, that big burden would go rolling back down the hill. And he went back again, and that was his eternal job, to keep rolling that heavy load up the hill, just to have it drop for some reason. His fingers got weak. How symbolic is that for us? You see, if Sisyphus just realized that all he had to say was, I'm not going to roll that thing up that hill anymore, he would be at peace. And the same with us. If you think about the burdens, it could be the habitual thinking. And I'll tell you in a minute what Ernest Holmes said those burdens are. But the habitual thinking we get, that we carry with us, and so often we don't even know that we're repeating the same patterns of limitation, where we don't believe in the allness and goodness of God and Spirit. So we keep rolling that up the hill in inferiority. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. All this, and you keep rolling and rolling, and then you'll have an experience and keep rolling it again. And then another one of the burdens that Ernest Holmes says are the hardest to keep holding in our hearts and our minds is rejection. We can reject ourselves. We can reject life. We can reject the people around us that are our teachers and learners. And we'll know we're rejecting when we start judging, because that's how we know we're rejecting, when we're pushing away with our judgments. And that rejection gets so heavy. So we've got rejection, inferiority, and I think for all of us, we felt the anxiety of these times. Worry, but anxiety is about what's going to happen in the future. And that's when we don't have enough faith that there's a power greater than we are. And all healing happens when we know there's something greater, an infinite intelligence, a power greater than we are, that responds to our mental thoughts. I say our mental states because it's not just our conscious thoughts, it's our unconscious thoughts. It's always responding and creating because there's a law. That's the law that responds, that gives us what we put out there. So we need to make sure our whole package, if we're going to be wholehearted, wholeness, W-H-O-L-E-ness, not whole filled with holes, but wholeness, we've got to own the whole of life, all of it, all of ourselves, our wonderful sides and those creepy little things we have, those little habits, those little things we have, the limited thinking we get. But to be whole, we have to love it all. And when we love that in us, it's about the whole world too. So we have to think about this thing. There's this infinite intelligence right here. See if you can feel it. It's not only around us, but it's through us. And so if we have these burdens, we want them to be transformed. But let me tell you, there is a power for good in the universe, and we can be transformed by faith and understanding, but it takes a 4-letter word. Work. Faith without works is dead. We can want to change and transform, but we have to do the work. And sometimes, oftentimes, most times, it's uncomfortable to get from here to there. It wasn't easy for me to stand up here this morning and talk the way I did. That isn't easy. It's much easier to skip around in the fun and the lightness and the joy. But that's not what these times are calling for. They're calling for us to do the hard work of unloading from ourself our insecurities and what we can do to feel freer and lighter. And once we do, it frees others to do the same. So I really want you to think in your own life right now, and in the mind of God, there are no size of burdens. Although some seem so much bigger right now, whatever burden we're carrying is a burden that wants to be understood. It's calling for attention. I look to those giants we have on the wall, whose shoulders we stand on. Every one of the pictures we have on this wall over here are people that have dealt with adversity, that have dealt with problems, and come out in the grace of God, in a consciousness of peace, because they've done their work. And I look to Martin Luther King, of course, at times of nonviolent riots and really searching for peace in a nonviolent way. And there's an article he wrote, and it was called Suffering and Faith. And he said he didn't like to talk about the suffering in his life, because he thought when you talk about your suffering, people can think you have a martyr complex, like you always want sympathy from people. I truly understand what he's talking about. It's like you don't want to talk about the suffering because it may project the wrong image or idea. But he said his suffering has done so much to shape his thinking about who he is and his place in the world. So in this article, here's what he said. I have been arrested 5 times and put in Alabama jails. My home has been bombed twice. A day seldom passes that my family and I don't receive death threats. I've been a victim of a near-fatal stabbing. I've been battered by the storms of persecution. You can feel it and know it. He said, I must admit that at times I have felt I could no longer carry such a burden. When have you felt like that in your life? That you could no longer do what you've been doing? It was too painful, too hard, too difficult, that you just wanted to run away and live in peace and serenity and harmony. If any of you have never felt that way, or any one of you, would you raise your hand? I think in the last week I've thought about that maybe 5 times. Maybe 7, I don't know. But it's a common thought. Oh, couldn't it just be easier? We didn't sign up for that. We signed up to be right here, right now, in this moment. We signed up to be here. We signed up for all of the other things in our life. But what Martin Luther King goes on to say is that every time he's just ready, now I'm putting these words in his mouth, but to throw the towel in, every time, something takes over. Something greater than he is. That makes him understand that gives him a greater meaning in his life, that he can go on, that he can recognize he can either choose bitterness at these times of difficulty, or he can be a creative force and a change for good. But I always choose the creative force and the change for good. And that's the gift we have. Within us, our greatest gift is our imagination. Our ability to create, using the power of our thoughts and the feelings of our heart to create a new experience in our life at any time. Anytime we have the power to do that. You, me, all of us. So during the most difficult times, it's the most important that we use this power, this creative energy, to create something better. King also said, the ultimate measure of a person is not where they stand in times of comfort and convenience, but where they stand during times of challenge and controversy. He said his question and his prayer is, what is mine to do? No one person can do everything, but everyone can do something to make this experience of life more meaningful, happier, better, to create something more. The power's in you and the power's in me. We have that power right now. But how do we get there? I'm going to tell you another story. This came from John O'Donohue's book too. And it's a story of a man who's on a mission. How many of you have been on a mission? You want to get something done, and you want to get it done when? Now, not tomorrow, not yesterday, but now. I want to do it. And he wants to go to Africa on a journey. So he goes to Africa, and he has quite a bit of luggage with him, and he hires some Africans to come and take his luggage with him, and he goes off, and he's on a pace, and they race and race and race through the jungle for 3 days. And on the third night, the Africans sit and stop and will not move. And he looks at him. He said, we have a place I have somewhere to be. We've got to get going. We've got to get going. They wouldn't move. They wouldn't speak. And he's getting frustrated. And finally, he gets one of them to speak. And the man says, we shouldn't be here by now. We've gone too quickly. We have to wait for our spirits to catch up with us. Wow. What a message that is. To be on the go all the time doesn't put us in the place to be receptive to the creative thoughts that are always at work. It doesn't put us in that space to be still and know that I am God. It doesn't put us in the place. Now, we've had a quarantine that I hope many of us have used for some healing of burdens and past thoughts. And now we can use that same time, that same energy, that same space to say, what is mine to do? Fun, meaningful, different, new, it doesn't matter. We're born to have all the experiences. But it's what's the creative energy in me wanting for me to do right now? And then it's the power of prayer that allows us to be in conscious union with that power for good. Now, prayer, it's not a magic wand. It's not a letter to Santa. Here's what I want. And I want it at Christmas, and I want it now. It's not bargaining or telling God what to do. A prayer is about realizing right in the moment, right where we are, Spirit is. And it's about opening ourselves up to a greater truth, that we make known what it is we want. If it's peace on earth, if it's peace in our own life, if it's love that we want to experience today, if it's creative energy, if it's healing, we just know right now we have the power to know that truth, and it's ours for the taking. It's ours for the opening right now to understand, but Spirit can only do for us what it can do through us. So the reason I've been talking about letting go of all those burdens in your life is to be an open vessel for Spirit to work through us, that we can be the hands of love and light and goodness in the world. Darkness doesn't overcome darkness. Light does. Hate doesn't overcome hate. Love does. And that's what we want to be the vessel for, the open vehicle for today. You know, it's funny, I called Griselda and I asked if we could have some little candles, because we want to ignite the light of love and goodness and possibility and creative energy and all that in our hearts and souls and minds today. We want to uplift ourselves so we can go out. And it was, as Gandhi said, be the change we want to see in the world, that we can go out and be the light in whatever circle of influence we have. It doesn't matter how big or small. But then I remembered social distancing. And I thought, how are we going to light the candle? So, Griselda, thank you for getting all the candles together. But we're going to just have to pretend today that we have a candle. And that this candle represents the teachers that have gone before us. The teachers. Our own personal teachers. And the teachers that are out in the world. Making known what needs to be healed. Martin Luther King said that protests and riots are the voices of those that feel unheard. And that's why I said that I'm here to be a listener and a learner and a lover. That's my job. That's what my prayer is today. So I'm going to light this candle from all those that have gone before us. And know the truth is that this light is the light of Spirit, that the soul is eternal, that life goes on, but we are here now to share that light of goodness, the light of love. And Kirk, if you'd come up and we could have our song, because I want to talk a little bit as we prepare for the song today. I want you to imagine that you're holding a candle like we do at Christmas and we do other times at vigils, and that the candle always means the light of peace. It's just what the light means. It's the light of peace. It burns away all the burdens, all the problems, all the injustices to ourselves and others. And the light shows that wick is the spiritual understanding, that spiritual understanding that there's always a greater good at work, even if we don't see it manifest in the world. There's always something more at work. So just imagine that you're holding your candle. You are going to leave here lighter, better than ever. I know that. And this candle just represents our beloved community. And there's no place in the world I would rather be than with each and every one of you, because I know we're in this together. And I love you all. And we're going to blow the candle out, but it's all ignited right within.